Have you ever felt utterly confused when a woman who once gave you the warmest affection suddenly goes cold and distant? Precisely when things seemed most intimate. Today, we'll uncover the quiet paradox of why women sometimes pull away, not because love has vanished, but because it has arrived too deeply, and what a wise man must do when this happens. In life, much confusion arises not from events themselves, but from how we interpret them. We believe that affection must always be loud, visible, and consistent. But what if silence, withdrawal, or distance from a woman is not the sign of fading love, but the mark of love becoming real? A wise man does not panic in uncertainty. He does not rush to fix what may not be broken. Instead, he observes. He centers himself. He listens not just to words, but to the spaces between them. Today, we explore a difficult truth: why a woman's love may look like absence, and why stillness, not reaction, is your greatest strength. Love makes the mind turbulent, not rational. In a world that expects love to manifest in clear signs, smiles, embraces, words of devotion, we often forget that the human psyche does not follow straight lines. Especially in women, deep love does not always arrive wrapped in tenderness. It can enter like a storm, disrupting her inner balance, clouding her ability to express, and throwing her into a silent conflict that no words can resolve. Men, in their search for confirmation, often misread this disturbance. They perceive quietness as distance, hesitation as disinterest, and emotional withdrawal as rejection. But in truth, what they are often witnessing is the invisible battle within, a heart overwhelmed by feelings too vast to articulate. The soul, when struck by love in its purest form, becomes vulnerable, and with vulnerability comes fear. Not the fear of love itself, but the fear of losing it. A woman who begins to feel something real may also begin to fear what this feeling can take from her. Her independence, her pride, her control over her own emotions. These things become threatened when love enters too deeply. She may feel like she is no longer in command of her own direction, that her emotional sovereignty is slipping away. And so, in order to regain stability, she pulls back. Not because she cares less, but because she suddenly cares more than she expected. This pulling back is not premeditated. It is not a calculated strategy. Rather, it is instinctual, a reflex of the soul when it feels exposed. Love, especially when unexpected or intense, reveals old wounds. It awakens memories of past betrayals, of times when opening up led to disappointment, abandonment, or shame. A woman may find herself retracing emotional steps she thought were long healed. In the midst of this emotional chaos, her actions become unpredictable. She may appear distant one moment and affectionate the next. To the untrained eye, this is confusing. But to the man who understands the nature of emotional tides, it is not rejection. It is vulnerability taking form. What complicates this further is the expectation placed on women to be emotionally transparent. Society teaches us that women are the communicators, the nurturers, the ones who are more emotionally fluent. But this stereotype fails to capture the depth and complexity of the inner feminine experience. A woman in love does not always feel safe enough to articulate what she feels. Her silence may be the result of intense self-examination. She may be questioning her worthiness of love, wondering whether what she feels is real or imagined, or trying to understand the impact this love will have on her identity. In the midst of such reflection, words feel too small, and so men often misread this introspection as indifference. They react, they push, they demand explanations, they seek clarity where there is only fog, but by doing so, they disturb a process that must unfold in stillness. A woman in emotional conflict is not a puzzle to be solved. She is a landscape to be observed with patience. She does not need fixing. She needs space to process the unfamiliar intensity of what she feels. When her mind is in turmoil, any external pressure only deepens her retreat. To love a woman when she appears cold is to understand that fire burns quietly in some moments. That passion is not always loud. That love, when real, can provoke not just joy, but terror. She may fear that giving in to these emotions will destroy the life she has carefully built. She may worry that her affection will be used against her. She may question whether you, the object of her love, can carry the weight of her heart. In this turbulence, rationality fades, and the emotional self takes over. It does not follow logic. It does not move in straight lines. It moves in loops, pauses, sudden jolts of affection followed by inexplicable distance. When a woman feels deeply for a man, her actions do not always match the popular expectations of what love should look like. Instead of leaning in closer, she may step back. Instead of flooding him with affection, she might go silent. This confuses many men, but what is often mistaken for emotional retreat or disinterest is in fact a form of unconscious testing, not of manipulation, but of seeking something solid. A woman in love, especially if she has experienced emotional instability in the past, searches for stillness, not in herself, but in the man she feels drawn to. Love, for many women, is not simply about connection. It's about safety. When love becomes intense, her emotional world begins to shift. She starts to lose the comfortable detachment she had before. The growing intimacy threatens her self-control. And so, to protect herself, she withdraws, not because she doesn't care, but because she cares deeply and needs to know whether the man she's opening up to can be trusted with that vulnerability. Her withdrawal is a silent question. Are you stable enough to hold space for her fear, her doubts, her inner chaos? This is where the test begins. Not a conscious manipulation, but a psychological necessity. She observes what happens when she takes a step back. Will he panic? Will he begin to chase, to pressure, to collapse into neediness? Or will he remain as he is, steady, composed, and unmoved by the storm? The woman in love wants to know if the man she is drawn to is an anchor or a leaf in the wind. Can he hold his posture, his presence, his principles, even when he is faced with her uncertainty? She needs to know if his interest is rooted in grounded being, or if it is merely reactive desire. Women are finely attuned to emotional energy. They feel it more than they hear it. If a man begins to act out of desperation, if he becomes insecure, if he starts seeking constant reassurance, if he falls into emotional dependence, he signals that he cannot withstand emotional tension. And emotional tension is inevitable in love. A woman needs to know that the man she is opening herself to will not crumble when things become difficult or unclear. She needs to know that his sense of self is not dependent on her constant affirmation. When a woman steps back, her silence becomes a mirror. In that mirror, the man sees himself, his impatience, his doubts, his craving for control. It becomes clear whether his masculinity is performative or embodied. A man who is truly centered will not be disturbed by her distance. He understands that her emotions are not his to manage. He is not there to fix her feelings, nor to chase validation. He stands where he is, with quiet dignity. His calmness is not coldness, but inner alignment. And this very calmness, this unshakable stillness, becomes magnetic. The woman watches, she feels. She senses whether she is engaging with someone who is whole on his own. If he is, it grants her permission to relax, to open again. But if his identity is shaped by her response to him, she withdraws further, not out of punishment, but out of self-preservation. A woman in love tests not through words, but through distance, ambiguity, and moments of emotional inconsistency. These moments are not games, they are necessary measures of a man's emotional maturity. Stillness in this context is not passivity. It is presence without panic. It is confidence that does not require proof. It is the ability to love without begging, to stay grounded even when affection is withheld. When a man meets her silence with stillness, not fear, when he honors his own center before reacting to hers, he sends a signal far deeper than words ever could. He shows that he can hold space, not collapse into it. And it is in that space, that non-reactive space, that trust is quietly built from the ground up. Silence, in the context of a woman's deep affection, is rarely empty. It carries weight, history, emotion, and an often misunderstood signal of inner vulnerability. When a woman loves deeply, the experience does not always come with ease or comfort. It unearths fears, awakens past pain, and opens a doorway to emotional territories she may not yet know how to navigate. In such moments, silence becomes her refuge. Not because she has withdrawn her care, but precisely because the depth of her feelings has become overwhelming. Her silence is not a form of rejection, it is a form of protection. Love, when intense, challenges the boundaries of selfhood. A woman who begins to fall in love may begin to feel unsafe, not from the man himself, but from the emotional intensity within her. She may sense that this love has the power to shake the identity she has built, to dissolve the walls she has erected for years, and to pull her into a vulnerability she has long guarded herself against. The silence that follows is not her trying to escape love, but her instinctively seeking ground to stand on before she allows herself to be swept into its current. This silence is not cold, it is full of questions. Is it safe to trust this man with everything I am? Will he remain if I show him the darker parts of my heart? What happens if I give too much of myself? These questions do not always arrive in words, but in emotional sensations that are hard to articulate. And so, rather than speak, she pauses. Rather than explain, she waits. She returns to herself, not to flee the relationship, but to observe it more closely. In that space of observation, she attempts to measure not just the man's behavior, but her own capacity to love without losing herself. Many men misread this behavior. Conditioned to associate silence with disinterest or manipulation, they grow anxious. They seek clarity. They interpret her withdrawal as a statement when, in truth, it is a question. An internal question she asks herself. Can I let this in without it undoing me? Her retreat is not an exit. It is a moment of necessary emotional recalibration. She is not pushing him away. She is trying to hold herself together while her feelings for him expand beyond what she can presently contain. When a woman is silent, she is listening, not just to the man, but to her own inner voice. She is listening to the tension between desire and fear, between surrender and self-protection. Deep love exposes every scar. It reminds her of what she once lost, what she gave too freely, and what it cost her in the past. Her silence becomes a shelter from all those memories that have suddenly resurfaced. If she speaks too soon, she may say things that are not true to her deeper feelings. If she opens too quickly, she may find herself vulnerable in a way that feels unsafe. And so she says nothing, not out of apathy, but out of care. There is an enormous difference between emotional absence and silent presence. A woman in love who goes quiet is still very much present. She is feeling everything, perhaps more than she ever has. Her silence is her way of holding those feelings without spilling them in a moment of panic or uncertainty. She needs to know that she can explore these feelings without pressure, that she can go inward without being pulled outward, that her emotional process is allowed to unfold on its own terms without fear of abandonment or interrogation. What she needs in this silence is not answers from the man, but evidence that she can feel what she feels without being punished for it, that her stillness will not be met with aggression, that her emotional rhythm, even when slow or dissonant, will not be met with demands for explanation. She needs to see if the space she's creating will be filled with respect, not noise. A woman in silence is not closed off. She is more open than ever, just not in a way that's visible. Her vulnerability lies in that very invisibility. She has let the door of her heart open just a little, but before she lets anyone enter fully, she listens closely to the silence inside and watches what the man does with it. The need for validation is one of the most subtle yet dangerous traps a man can fall into when navigating love, especially when a woman he cares for becomes distant or quiet. His instinct may be to seek reassurance, clarity, or affirmation. He asks questions not out of curiosity, but out of fear. He tries to fix what isn't broken because he cannot sit with uncertainty. He texts too quickly, checks his phone too often, reads too much into silence, and begins to feel that her affection is the oxygen his self-worth depends on. And in that moment, though he may not realize it, he fails the deeper test, not of her, but of life itself. Presence is not the absence of desire. It is the mastery of it. A man who is truly present does not stop caring when a woman pulls away. But he does not crumble either. He remains rooted. He does not let her distance unravel his sense of identity. He does not begin to question his worth, nor does he try to overcompensate by proving himself to her. He knows that her silence may have nothing to do with him. And even if it does, his value is not determined by how she responds to him in a moment of uncertainty. Presence means being anchored in the self, not floating in the emotional tides of another person's approval. To panic in her silence is to reveal that your inner peace was never yours, it was borrowed from her validation. The moment she retreats, you collapse. You interpret her pause as a threat to your worth. And from there, you try to grasp, to chase, to pull her back into a space where you feel safe again. But this only pushes her further away. Why? Because it is not love you are offering her in that moment. It is need. And need, when rooted in insecurity, feels like pressure. It makes her feel like she is being asked to manage your emotions instead of trusting her own. The man who remains still is not emotionless. He feels the uncertainty, the ache of disconnection, the pull to do something. But he does not act on those impulses. He watches them rise and fall like waves. He breathes through them. He remains whole, remembering that nothing outside him, not even the affection of a woman, can complete him. His presence is not a performance but a discipline. He has cultivated enough inner structure that he does not collapse when hers disappears, even momentarily. And this, paradoxically, draws her closer, because in his stillness she feels safety. Not the safety of comfort, but the safety of emotional stability. When a woman is testing, consciously or unconsciously, what she is really looking for is whether the man can hold his ground. Can he remain who he is when she is uncertain of who she is? Can he respect her emotional process without interrupting it to soothe his own fears? Can he sit in the unknown without rushing to conclusions or demands? These are not questions she will ask with words. They are questions she asks with space, with silence, with distance. And the answers she receives are not from what he says, but from what he does not do. If he remains, not clinging, not demanding, but simply there, present, aware, open, he becomes someone she can trust, not just with her heart, but with her silence. True presence is rare. It is not about being passive. It is about being attentive without being invasive. It is about understanding that not every emotional pause is a crisis to be fixed. Sometimes, the most powerful thing a man can do is nothing, not out of indifference, but out of respect. Respect for her space, respect for her timing, respect for himself. A man who does not seek constant validation sends a deeper message than any romantic gesture ever could. He says, "I am not here because I need you to make me whole. I am here because I already am." And this kind of presence is what allows a woman to stop performing and start feeling. Because in the absence of pressure, love does not retreat, it unfolds.